part of our Qt C++ GUI Development Intermediate course, and we will be using the basic knowledge we learned from the Graphics View Framework chapter. If you are interested in these basics and many more things we cover in the course, you can check it out from the link here, which is going to be shared in the video description below. In this lecture, we're going to put in practice what we've learned about the Graphics View Framework. We are going to build a clone of the Flappy Bird game. If you don't know that game, we have it opened here, and this is what we're going to have by the time we are done with this demo. You can start it, and you can do your best to not be hit by these columns coming from left to right. And if you lose, you're going to fall like this, and you're going to lose. This game is going to involve a few things. You will have to put together a graphics view to show the data here. You're going to put together a graphic scene to hold the items that you see here. And by the way, everything you see here, the columns here, the bird, this game over graphics, all these things you see here are graphic items. So we're going to have to figure out how we can build something like this, and it's going to be fun. Let's try it again before we get to build it so that you have a feel of what this is really like. And okay, so this is really what we're going to build. So how are we going to build this? We're going to design a few classes. We're going to design a class modeling the bird item. We are also going to do a class modeling the pillar item or the columns you saw coming from left to right. And here you see how the bird class is going to look like. It's really nothing complicated. You see that it is subclassing QGraphics pixmap item because it's going to show a pixmap of this bird here. And down here we have a few member variables. You see we have the wing position here, which can be up, middle, or down. And we have a bunch of other member variables which are going to help us build the app here. One thing I want you to see that we haven't really talked about before is the property animation. You saw that the bird was falling down, and every time we clicked in the scene, we pushed it up a little bit. That's controlled by the property animation we're going to put in here. We are going to animate how the bird moves along the y-axis, and this is going to look like it's falling down. And the technology behind that is going to be powered by QProperty animation. And a QProperty animation can allow you to animate any kind of property, and we're going to have a chance to talk about that a little more. If you happen to be building your own custom property like we will do, you will have to go through this QProperty macro here to let Qt know that this is your property, and it's going to give you a chance to modify things when the property changes in the setter of that property. We're going to talk about this a little more as we move on with this demo, but I want you to have the idea about this up front. Okay, this is our bird item. To build the flapping of the wings for the bird, we're going to be changing the graphics for the bird item at given intervals. And this method here is going to change the wing. Each time it's going to be called, it's going to change the graphics for the wing. You see we have the up position for the bird wing, we have the down position, and we have the middle position. And we check and see if the wing position is the middle. We're going to do this. We're going to push it up or down. If it's not in the middle, we're going to bring it in the middle. This is what we mean here. After that, we're going to have to build our pillar items, and these are going to be based on QGraphics item group. This is a class that you use to group multiple graphics items together and manipulate them as one single item. You're going to see how this works when we get to build this, but this is the big idea. So what it's going to group? Well, it's going to group our pixmap items, and you see them here. One to the top, one to the bottom. So we're going to handle all these items as one single thing, and it's going to make things a bit easier. We have nothing complicated in here really. We have a property which is going to allow us to animate how the pillar moves from left to right, and we have a bunch of other member variables that are going to make these things work better. And we're going to talk a little more about these methods as we build this thing. One key thing we need to do for this application to detect that the user has actually lost is to check that the bird has collided with the pillar item. And this is what this method here does. It's going to be called onPillarItem. It's going to get a list of colliding items, and we're going to loop around looking in that list if we have a bird item. If we find one, we're going to return true, meaning that the bird has just collided with the pillar item, and we're going to stop the game. You're going to see how this works. And if we loop around and do not find any bird item, we're going to return false, meaning that the bird hasn't collided with the pillar item just yet. We said that we are going to animate a bunch of properties, and QProperty animation is going to help us out. It is a class that animates Qt properties, and down here they give you an example of how you can animate an already existing property about a widget. You see, this is a widget they pass in here, and they are trying to animate the geometry of this widget. They pass in the duration for the animation, they pass in the start value, which is going to be this rectangle, and they pass in the end value, which is going to be this rectangle here. So what is going to happen? Qt is going to try and move smoothly from the start position to the end position, and it's going to fill in the gaps and give you a smooth transition from the start value to the end value. This is what animations really do. Here we have an example of how we can animate the Y position of our bird item. We're going to give it the property that we want to animate, and its name is going to be Y. This is a custom property, and I am going to show you a few things you need to do for this to work in a minute. But here we just want to see how we can set up our animation. You pass in the starting position, and it's going to be where the bird is currently at in the scene. We set an Isern curve, which is going to control how our animation is going to be carried out. We're going to pass in the end value, and it's going to be the ground position. And by this, you can see that we want for the bird to fall smoothly from the current position where it is in the scene to the ground position. And we are going to define this ground position. We set the duration for the animation, and we connect to a signal from the animation to know when the animation is finished, and we want to do something that you're going to see in a minute. You can also define a rotation animation, and you see the property we're trying to animate here is the rotation, and you can go on and set your start value, end value, and do all kinds of crazy things. One thing you should know is that if you put in your custom property, you need to kind of declare or define it using the QProperty macro like this. And the way this works is really simple. You pass in the data type for your property. You specify the name of your getter method, which is going to be used to read that property. You specify a setter method that is going to write to that property. And this is really it. And once you have this defined, you can generate these getters and setters. And after this, your property is going to be ready to work, and we can use it in our animations. And you're going to see how this works exactly when we build this demo here. Okay, here we have an example of a rotation animation. We have its getter method, which is going to return the current rotation, but we want to focus on set rotation here, or a setter of our property, because that's where we're going to modify the way things work about our classes here. Here we have an example of the set rotation method. You see that it's going to set the member variable for rotation. This is obvious, but what we do, we also need to use this information to modify something about our class here, our bird item in this case. So what we do, we define a transform and set the rotation for this bird here. And this is what's going to cause for our animation to work. So this is key. In your setters, you have to take the information you have in the parameter and somehow use it to modify some aspect of your class. And this is going to be called throughout the interpolation from the start value to the end value in your animation. I really hope this makes sense. And we don't really need to say much about QTransform. You already know this class. But what you need to focus on here is that we are moving to the center of the bird item. You see that we are translating to the center. The C point we have here is the center of the bounding rect of the bird item here. So we are moving in the center of the bird. We are rotating this amount, and we are coming back to where we were for us not to disturb the transforms on this bird item. And then we set this transform to be used by the bird here. This is how we set up our rotation. Down here, we also have a set y method, which is going to be used to modify the y property that we define here. And this is really simple. We're going to move the bird on the y-axis, and we're going to move it by the amount equal to the difference between the current value here and the previous value for the y position. And we store this value to be the last value that is going to be used next time this method is going to be called. And I really hope this makes sense. Okay, now we have the ideas laid out for how we're going to build this project. We're going to attack this in 4 steps. We're going to start by setting up the project and putting everything in place. We're going to set up our graphics view and graphics scene. We're going to put in the initial graphics for you to be really ready to build this thing. When we are done with the project setup, I want you to pause and see if you can pull this out on your own. By that point, you are going to have enough ideas to build this, and it is going to be a chance for you to try these things out and learn things on your own. If you can't, you can watch how I build this, and if you succeeded, it is also recommended to watch how I did this so that you can see some ideas we get to use to get this thing going. After that, we're going to build our pillar item. We're going to get it in place. We're going to build the bird item, and after that, we're going to do some cleanup to have our project work really well. Okay, now we want to go to Qt Creator and do our project setup here. Okay, here we are in Qt Creator. We're going to create a new project. It's going to be a Qt widgets application as usual. We're going to call this Flappy Bird Qt. We're going to hit next. We're going to choose the kit we want to use, and we're going to base this off QWidget. We're going to finish. The first thing we want to do is to add in the graphics that we're going to use. Because I don't want you to waste time looking for graphics, you can use the ones I provide here. It's going to make things simpler, but you are free to use whatever you want because this is your game after all. So what we're going to do, we're going to go where this project is stored. We're going to add in a folder. We're going to call this images. We're going to go inside. We are going to put in our graphics here. You see, we have the graphics for the bird in different positions, down, middle, and up. We have the game over graphics that we're going to use when we get to this position. We have our pillar, and it has a number here. I think we can remove this number. We don't need that. And we have the sky graphics. We can close the application here, and we're going to add in a new resource file. You already know how to do this. Qt resource file. We're going to name this resource, and we're going to hit next until we finish. We're going to add a prefix, and we're going to remove this guy here. We don't want that. And we're going to add files, and we're going to go to images, and we're going to add in all the graphics here. We're going to open, and it's going to show up here. We're going to save this, and we're going to save all. This is going to give us the graphics that we're going to use for this game. The next thing we want to do is to set up our graphics view and graphics scene. Because we are going to be using a custom scene, we're going to create a new class for that. We're going to do add new C++ class, and we're going to name this scene. It's going to inherit QObject by default, and we're going to change this in a minute. We're going to go to the header and include QGraphics scene. And we are going to do the same in the CPP file. So let's use QGraphics scene. And somehow it didn't work in the header. So let's do that, QGraphics scene. And we are fine by now. Okay, Qt Creator is happy. We have our scene. Now we can go in widget CPP. Actually, I think we can do that in the header file. So we're going to include our scene. And we're going to create an object of it. We're going to say scene, pointer scene. Down in the CPP file, we are going to initialize that equals new scene. and we're going to give this a parent. We also need to put together a view, and for this I want to try a new way to do this. We're going to use a graphics view from the UI form here. So that you remember this, you can do this way. So the graphics view component is right here. Okay, we're going to apply a vertical layout to this thing, and we're going to have a graphics view that we can use, and its name is going to be graphics view, as you see here. Okay, now what we need to do after we have our things set up here is set the scene to be used by the view. We're going to say UI graphics view, and we're going to set scene, and we're going to pass in our scene here. The other thing I want to do is give this scene a scene rect. So we're going to say scene set scene rect, and I'm going to pass in these parameters here, and this is going to make it start at this location. It's going to be this wide, and it's going to be this high, and these are experimental values that I came up with to make it look exactly the way I want. And you can play with this and make it however you want. The next thing I want to do is to put in my graphics for the background. The sky graphics we have here, you can open this and look at this if you want. This is going to be our background. So we're going to create a QGraphics PixMap object. Let's include that class QGraphics, and we're going to add that here. And we're going to create an object of this. So we're going to say QGraphics PixMap item, Pix item, and it's going to be new QGraphics PixMap item. And we're going to pass in a PixMap that is going to be shown on our scene here. And we want to pass in a path to that. The way we get the location to that sky image, you already know that. We're going to select it, right click, and copy path, the first one here. Is it the first one? Yes, it is the first one. That's what we're going to put in here. Let's do that. And we goofed up here. It's not QGraphics path item. So let's correct that. PixMap item, we say that. Now that we have the PixMap item, we can add that to the scene. So we're going to say scene, add item. We're going to say Pix item. And by this point, I think we can run the application and see what it looks like. It's going to help us build this better. And we're going to find problems earlier and address them. Okay, we have the application here, and you see that our graphics is not really centered. We want to center this. The way we're going to do that, we're going to say Pix item, and we're going to set the position. And we're going to start from the center of the scene. So we're going to say Q.F, and we're going to pass in 0, 0. And we're going to subtract an offset because we want to move this to the left and to the top. We're going to say Q.F again, and we're going to subtract half the width of the PixMap on X. So we're going to say Pix item, bounding rect width by 2. We divide this by 2. And we're going to also subtract half the height in Y. We're going to say Pix item, bounding rect, and we're going to say height divided by 2. I think this is going to do what we want and move our thing in the center. I think we can move this to the next line for this to show up a bit better. And if we run the application now, we should have something better. And here is the application, and it is looking the way we want. We are also going to add in the grid lines to make things show up better. They are going to guide us in the process of building this thing. We're going to run the application, and we should have our grid lines here. And this is a good indication that this is the center of our scene, and it's going to help us position things better. Now we are done with the initial work of setting up the project the way we should use it. You have your graphics in. We have our scene set up that we're going to modify a bit to work the way we want. We also have the view in place, and we have a background item already placed on our scene, and it's looking like this. Now what I want you to do is pause the video and try to build this game on your own. Build a pillar item that is coming from left to right and put in the bird and see if you can pull this out. Before we go off and let you try this, I want you to come and visit Q property animation in the documentation. We're going to go down and I want to increase the size of this. If you want to also increase the size, hit Control Shift and hit the plus button. It's going to increase the size here. So this class animates Qt properties. If you look to the top, you're going to see some methods you can call on this. It inherits many of its properties from these classes. You see Q abstract animation, Q object, Q variant animation, and many of these classes here. So you're going to be getting many features already within the Q property animation class. What we're going to use this for is to animate the pillar, move from left to right, animate the bird as it falls down or it goes up again. And we are also going to rotate the bird when it moves up and down. You're going to see how this works, but I do invite you to try these things and see what you can come up with. So I assume you have paused and tried to build this thing on your own. And if you face a problem or if you are done with your way of doing this, please come and watch what we do next. The next lecture, we're going to start and put together our pillar item that is going to be based on this pillar image that we have here. So go ahead and finish up here and I'll see you in the next lecture.